Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Michael Walsh. He is the CEO at Green Cubes Technology, who provides lithium-ion battery solutions and overall power solutions for many industries, but also specifically for the industry that we care about on the podcast, warehousing and material handling. So we're going to dive into a little bit about Green Cubes. We've talked to them previously on the podcast, but we're going to catch up a little bit, and we're also going to hear a little bit about kind of their 10-year anniversary of their SafeFlex batteries, and also dive into just kind of the adoption of lithium ion and some of the benefits overall, and how some of those batteries have been performing over those 10 years. So Michael, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to get you on here and talk to you. I know previously we talked to Robin from Green Cubes, but you're relatively new to Green Cubes, right? About a year you've been on board as CEO. So I guess tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your history and your background, and maybe what attracted you to Green Cubes.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. So I've been here about a year. I was attracted because of a couple of things. One, it's a heavy engineering company. It's a technology company in a great space and a great market that's growing. And I've lived in the Midwest off and on. We've got our major factory in the Midwest. I just kind of love the vibe of that, and kind of, reinvigorating what's happening in the United States, manufacturing, warehousing, all that kind of boom. And then the benefits of electrification, all that stuff. Just a really nice fit. So my background is with technology companies. I was with General Electric for many years, many different technology businesses, and really with a bent on the aftermarket or the service angle. And so where we're at with Green Cubes is now we're 10 years into manufacturing lithium-ion systems for warehousing, material handling. Some people have been maybe lithium for 2-3 years. We're talking a lot of years, a lot of experience, but we're now in the aftermarket model where customers are saying, hey, great, they're still cooking, they're still doing well. Let's make sure we're set up for any upgrades or any tweaks or all the kind of things we need to do to get people trained up. So that leans into my background, which is really service and really what happens at customer sites, as much as what's up on the new technology and innovation that the company's always been good at.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting too that you pointed out the Midwest and the focus on bringing some manufacturing and distribution and things like that back into the United States. And I think it's really interesting to see how that continues to develop. And obviously, as that continues to grow and get built back up, people need power to move that equipment around additionally. So great to hear kind of a little bit about your history and some of the attraction to Green Cubes there. And very interesting too to hear about the start of that aftermarket, which we'll dive into a little bit later. But for those that are not familiar, maybe haven't heard the previous podcast episodes, give us a little bit of information about Green Cubes and what it is that you guys do exactly.
Yeah, so Green Cubes has been around 35 years in the making, and the core competency is lithium-ion battery systems. Not any other battery system, lithium. That's our baby. And so applications have been pretty broad. So we're in the carts, medical applications. So if you talk about a hospital trying to be efficient and also have controls of medicines and so forth, we're in that space with some really good partner customers and OEMs. We also do really well on anything that moves. So warehousing, again, anything getting from point A to point B. And then we've been the last 10 years of those 35 years, been a pioneer in the applications of fork trucks and material handling. So this year we'll recognize 10 years of our SafeFlex, which is really the warehousing material handling application. And we'll have 10,000 units in the field in fork trucks and ground support equipment using that technology, which again is just a great benefit in terms of electrification. So I think Green Cubes is in a space of being sort of a small, scrappy startup that's now pretty big.
Yeah.
And we got the fun part of being a bigger company, and that's where I fit in terms of how do we implement the scale and have the sophistication of a bigger company while still being entrepreneurial, which is really our birthright. And the future really looks good. We've tripled revenue in less than 2 years in our big motive material handling space. That's really exciting, but that means a lot more customers, a lot more jobs, a lot more sites. And so we're mindful of that growth trajectory and what it takes to have the proper infrastructure around it to make sure our customers get the best value prop return and the total cost of ownership. That's really what Green Cubes is all about in terms of lithium.
Yeah, and I think it's very impressive, and congratulations on that growth. I mean, I think that's a huge number, right, to be able to triple revenue. So, but obviously driving that, I mean, would be people that are in demand for lithium ion, right? So as I mentioned, we've had Green Cubes on the podcast previously, and we talked about lithium ion technology in the material handling space, but it continues to grow, and I think even when we spoke to Robin from Green Cubes about a year ago or so, I think it is now, it was still very much early in lithium ion and adoption, right? So I mean, tell us why, and certainly as you guys are seeing this growth in demand from material handling companies, why are facilities starting to choose lithium ion? Why are they shifting over to lithium ion? I mean, why is that demand increasing?
Yeah, I think you're right. The demand is increasing. The percentage of the mix of batteries that are lithium versus alternative combustion engine applications, lead acid applications is no question less environmentally friendly. But the good news, and the only reason why it takes off, is total cost of ownership. So the total cost of ownership is there. We have the proof points. So you're seeing batteries last longer. You're seeing batteries have less maintenance cycles. You're seeing batteries that if you have the right demand usage, which means, you're running 3 shifts or you're 24 hours, or you've got whatever the power needs that are really a good fit for something that you don't have to charge as often, or you don't have to replace as often, you don't have to maintain as often, you get that real good payback pretty quickly. And even the applications that aren't as great as a sweet spot, you still get that return on investment over time. And then I think the other tailwind that's helping this is the environmental benefits. So you've got companies that want to be great companies and also good companies. But at the end of the day, the CFO and the teams that own return on investment have to sign off. So I've seen some great initiatives over the year that just don't get legs because you don't have the payback. And there's some, alternative technologies. That's great. Good for anybody else. We don't dabble in that. We do nothing but lithium. That's what we focus on because return on investment has been proven. And I think the limiting factor for the most part is just like everybody else. When you adopt new technology, you have to be mindful of it. You have to be ready for it. Your infrastructure, in this case, charging, has to be ready. So we're seeing more and more customers dip their toe, or they look around the corner and they hear the value prop. Maybe they do one site. Now they're ready to do all of their warehouses or all of their manufacturing sites. So I think it's just taking fire in that regard. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a total cost of ownership payback, and the processes in the plant have got to be improved. And we're finding that that's happening. So that's really good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that total cost of ownership is such a big thing. I mean, you see, and I guess at where we are right now with lithium, I mean, obviously as technologies improve and start to evolve, costs start to go lower. I know that there was some discussion around lithium where, the upfront cost initially might be more than like a typical lead acid battery or something like that, but that total cost over time is going to be a lot less. So is that still the case, or are we seeing that upfront cost come down too as well?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. And certainly in trade-offs between lead acid or combustion, no question the total cost of ownership is there. So, and again, with us, the proof points are from 35 years in general with lithium, and then 10 years really focused on big machine stuff. So that's all there. And I think even on our website, we can calculate that out for people very quickly. I think a lot of people like to go out and do that. But yeah, that's for sure there. And then I think we're even seeing in some applications, back to the aftermarket comment, the people expecting to say, hey, I need a spare or I need to replace the battery. We're finding it longer and longer. So we had some OEMs we work with had an aftermarket demand signal that they were thinking, hey, get ready 2 years from now, we're going to need X units and Y of that. And they're not needing that because they're not having to replace them, which is great. Fine by us because it just helps us on the front end. So yeah, we're definitely seeing the total cost of ownership playing out, and we're seeing the life cycle of these batteries be probably even better in some cases than we had modeled, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's such a great thing, and I think it's so good to see too that the life of the batteries are lasting for longer than expectations, right? I mean, that's one of the big driving factors to the total cost of ownership, right? Is that you have to replace less and do less maintenance and all those things. So I mean, with the this 10-year anniversary for SafeFlex, I mean, obviously, you've had some batteries, I guess, at this point that have been out in the field for 10 years, right? I imagine. So tell us a little bit about some of the, I guess, in those 10 years, the learnings from Green Cubes, but also too, like, I mean, how have those batteries been performing, especially maybe those original ones that, started the whole business there?
Yeah. First, I think the compliments to the team to get to where we've gotten, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who were early innovators, proof of concepts, and going to sites that had never seen anything in this product category. We took off and ran with it, and most of those people are still with us today. And it's fun to kind of have visits with customers where they say, I remember when 8 years ago or 7 years ago or 10 years ago, and those batteries are still cooking and still working and all those kinds of things. So I'd say the number one lesson, similar to other technologies, is every site is different. Every application is different. So the faster we lean into saying exactly what do you have for your charging infrastructure, your electrical infrastructure, what are the processes in which you use these equipment, and do you have some variation from site to site? Okay, great. What kind of talent do you have for operators, and what comfort zone do they have? Are they trained up on this or that? So really getting to know the site is more important than knowing the battery. And I think for us, that learning curve has been definitely eye-opening. And it's not surprising to me coming from an aftermarket service background. Yeah. That's basically where I've lived. But I think from the team, very much a product, design team, they want to work on the greatest, newest stuff. We've got to ground them constantly in saying, well, what really matters is somebody that has something out in the field and they want to optimize that asset. So I'd say the number one learning curve for us would be that every site is unique, and lean into that and take advantage of it. And that way you kind of maximize the benefits for both us and for the customers.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense because, you look at from a warehouse fulfillment center perspective. I mean, you're right. I mean, no facility is 100% the same in that regard. So, I mean, I'm curious from that lesson too, like on the customer side, right? If I'm a potential customer and I'm looking to switch to lithium-ion, I mean, from a infrastructure and facility perspective, I mean, what should I do on my side to maybe prepare for that switch, or when I'm looking at adopting lithium-ion, like what kind of things do I need to change, or do I need to change anything at all?
Yeah, I think, everything comes down to process, but the way my brain works would be start with what your return on investment model is.
Mhm.
So my thought process is we're going to go from X to Y, and the benefits are going to be the following. So let's lay out what those benefits are, and then let's back into how to get there. So, for instance, if we think we can have the benefits of 3 shifts and using these trucks over time. Okay, great. So that replaces what we were doing before. So how do we make sure that that's sustainable? How is that sustainable? Well, make sure they're charged and ready for that 3 shift. So what's your charging capability, and do you have enough to charge all of the assets that you need to implement that solution? So I'd say backing into what your return on investment is a good answer. I don't care what you're doing.
Mm.
So yeah, so that would be, what's your value prop internally? How did you justify this internally? Great. And then how do we back into that to make sure you're ready? Basic, coming from an electrical background, you've got to have the power coming into the plant. You've got to distribute it appropriately. So, but that generally isn't a problem. We're seeing that more in airport applications where they maybe had some diesel trucks,
Mm.
pretty nasty environmental
Yeah.
kind of usage there. Now going to electrification, well, they're finding maybe they don't have the right electrical infrastructure in the right places, and sometimes they can get ahead of themselves. Meaning, we want to go for electrification quickly, and we've got money, and everything is great. But their limiting factor could be getting the right labor and electrical contractor and getting material to update their electrical system. So again, everyone is different, and the application really of the site is what's driving it. But yeah, I'd say once again, start with what's your return on investment. Let's commit to that, and let's back in how we get there, and find out what's critical path, and make sure the critical path is done before you intend to get the return from the batteries. So definitely the electrical infrastructure and the charging infrastructure tends to be the number one first step that everybody has to consider.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, it is interesting too to see as we replace some of the older technologies or solutions, like you mentioned, the diesel application at an airport, how that kind of changes the way we look at things, but also can help us to increase those cost savings over time, and also like our environmental footprint as well. So very interesting. And we continue to see lithium-ion adoption increase, and I'm curious your thoughts and what Green Cubes is seeing in terms of the adoption rate, and where do you think we'll be on the power spectrum, I guess you could say, in a couple years, where lithium-ion versus like a typical, or I guess traditional lead acid or other solutions. I mean, where will lead acid be in a few years, and where is it right now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the mix of lithium will go up. Again, with return on investment being there, and then the sustainability. So, if you've got, think of lead acid, it's getting even more complicated, right? You've got to take care of your employees at site. So they have to be ready to work with lead. They have to, fill them up and have a station for in case the acid became a contaminant. They have to have all sorts of regulation compliance and things like that. So that's pretty complicated stuff where you don't have that with lithium. So that's certainly a driver that's meaning that lithium as a mix is going to be higher than lead acid, just because of the maintenance and the safety and the infrastructure and the constant maintenance and regulation of it. And the opposite is true with lithium. There are legislative drivers saying, adopt this technology, we'll give you some rebates, we'll give you some credits. So depending upon the state, that's being more and more prevalent. So I think we'll see in the next 3 to 5 years, more and more states adopt ways to be a catalyst to say, let's get this investment forward, because it's going to be a good return in the future. And I think the governments, a lot of the cases are, well, I want this plant viable. I want these workers working in mid-Ohio or Iowa or whatever. So how do I have a modern technology that's sustainable and is going to make me productive and competitive on a global scale? And lithium leans into that big time. And then it also helps with the environmental benefits of the alternatives, which are, combustion engine or lead acid, that certainly have the environmental drags on them that mean that, it's a bit of a target on them to be certainly not put in a new plant, but also not to be continued when there's retrofit opportunities, because our stuff would be a drop-in replacement. So you don't have to do anything to the truck necessarily other than drop it in, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to see that push from a legislative perspective too, to be able to enable some of that to happen. And I think it's interesting too, as you see the more and more proof, as you've been mentioning, around the ROI and that total cost of ownership being lower. I think it makes a lot of sense to start moving in that direction and being able to accommodate that and putting in that lithium ion into the right applications. And I know in the beginning with lithium ion, at least in the last couple of years, the discussion has been around that it makes sense. And I think you mentioned earlier there too, that, if you have those 2-3 shift applications, like that's really where there's a good fit for lithium ion. But are we moving as adoption gets greater and costs come down more and the technology evolves more? Are we moving to situations where like a 1 shift operation, it would make sense to start to bring in lithium ion?
Yeah, I think it depends upon the plant and what their horizon and what their hurdle is, right? Again, technology businesses that are an emerging, environmental friendly are super fun and exciting, but sooner or later they pass the mustard. So we're seeing those benefits get lower and lower as we're seeing more pain points associated with combustion engine and lead. So we're seeing more and more customers say that they want to use it in applications that we probably wouldn't have seen 5 years, 7 years ago. And some of it comes down to the fact that, across a multi-site, they want to have some consistency where they can cross-train people. Maybe they can have a project team implement this across multiple locations, and it's just better and simpler, even though the value prop and payback may not be as high. And like you mentioned, a single shift operation, the long-term benefits are enough that they can justify it. Maybe they wait and to be phase 3 and not phase 1 and phase 2, but we're definitely seeing that. We're seeing smaller kind of add-on orders where somebody might have had 100 battery, 200 battery, big project. And now we're seeing the 5, 10, 7 add-ons to that. Same customer, same, general headquarter person driving the decision. But they're doing some maybe satellite locations, which are more spoke and hub, where they're not really heavy usage. They're just local staging where people can get the demand fulfilled in one shift. But we're seeing more and more of that adding on. So it's kind of more of a push as a company to do this as opposed to maybe a big site, which is really what we tend to have first. So definitely seeing the satellites pick it up, and definitely seeing a lot more thinner ROIs or longer ROIs come to fruition.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know, because I think that pushes a lot more towards wider adoption as well, especially as they're able to figure out those use cases and find those fits, especially for like those medium-sized businesses maybe that are, only running 1 shift or maybe, 1.5 shift with the part-time or something like that, to be able to increase that adoption further and have that better impact overall too with lithium ion. So, as we look forward to the future, right? You guys are celebrating 10 years, right, of the SafeFlex lithium ion, but it doesn't stop there, right? We hope there's another 10 years into the future. So as Green Cubes kind of looks to continue to develop the technology and get further out into the market, what can we expect to see in the future from Green Cubes?
Yeah. Definitely, if you think about the next 10 years, first and foremost, we have to take care of the customers we have and the sites we have, right? That's got to be front of desk. And that's a bit different than what it would have been 10 years ago. So we're proud of that. So we'll be an aftermarket company that will be taking care of customers and making sure that they get that extra 5 years, 3 years, whatever. And they're really, again, helping to push this forward. And then we'll be mindfully getting into adjacent applications and expanded applications. So adjacent applications will be other places that typically don't use lithium, and they're now ready. So they're ready to go. So you see different vehicles. And then expansion would be, we're going up the voltage classes, which will mean bigger assets or assets using higher voltages. So there's different construction of the electrical system. We're seeing more and more demand. And what happens is the customers start coming to us and say, hey, we're working on this. And then we work with them to kind of get into that. So I think we'll be talking about a lot of these kind of things that as we get into Modex, and we're looking forward to that next year. I'm sure we'll see you there too.
Yeah.
But we'll be talking about sort of that next horizon as we kind of get into that. But definitely that's what's on the next 10 years. A lot more expansion in adjacent markets and up and down the voltage classes and the size of machines, because I think now we're showing across all industries that lithium is able to have the horsepower to do the kind of things that need to get done. It's just how appropriately and how quickly you can get them into the different systems so that you can get off and running. So we've got quite a few things in the hopper on that. And, again, we're trying to be smart enough to say, again, we got to take care of the customers we've got. We've got to be mindful about that in addition to growing and expanding, and working those two things at the same time are really what our journey is the next 10 years.
All right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I love the approach too that you've kind of reiterated here a couple of times, is that, focusing on that service for the existing customers and what's been in place. Because I think as we, you see it with any newer technology, right, that, things change in the way that customers need to be serviced, and how that product is handling over time, and growing over time and evolving over time. That service needs to evolve with that too. So I love that you guys are focusing on that so much. I think that's very, very important. And then we'll, establish that kind of service foundation for future customers too as well, which is a great thing. So we're definitely really looking forward to maybe some exciting news at Modex too, and then hearing some future things with Green Cube's technology. But before we close out here, I do want to ask you, and whenever I talk about, lithium-ion on the podcast and with different people, I always want to find out and see, like, for people that are listening, if they are on the fence about lithium-ion, maybe, they're not quite sure, newer technology, a little skeptical, what would you say to kind of maybe encourage them to look a little further or explore the technology for their operation?
I would say any technology, it's good to be cautious. And, I'm not an early adopter personally, right? I like to watch it, and I think that maybe comes from being one of the youngest of 8 kids. It was okay. That wasn't hard. Once I learned that lesson, it's easy which way to go. So I think the early adopters are out there. The proof points are out there. So I would, anybody that's on the fence and thinking, ask these kind of questions and let's dig into it. So, and every application is different. So I think for us, we're going to ask you the 4 or 5 key questions about what success looks like in terms of what's your electrical infrastructure, what's your use case, who are your people, and who are your processes. And if we have clarity on that, you're definitely ready. If you're fuzzy and all over on that, then let's sort through that before any technology comes in. So I think that's the main thing to do. So yeah, I would say good questions, ask them and dig in and think through it, because everybody works differently. But it all comes down to processes, in my opinion. So if you understand your processes and what goals you have, then just check and see whether it's a fit. This fit works really well from the standpoint of it'll be easier on your plant in the long term because you won't have the lead acid combustion, all those kind of infrastructures to deal with, right? And so if you have high mix of your people, good news is they had the job with you, they moved on and got promoted or whatever. You got to bring in somebody new. It's a lot more onerous for them to work around some of these older technologies, which have the environmental burden. So that's a really good news story there. And then I'm finding, a lot of contemporary workers like these technologies. So it tends to be something that I think keeps people working in plants. They like to work on cool things. Certainly that's the case with us in manufacturing, but I think in warehouses too, people like to be around automation and new things, and they fire up their laptops at work. It's a different person working in these roles than it was 20 years ago, and they love this kind of thing. So I think that's also another benefit that's a bit of a underwhelmed, is that it can attract the right kind of people when you use automation like this and you use technology like this. So I think those things are all going to be drivers if you're on the fence of think about where you want to be in 10 years. And does this fit with your vision or not? If it doesn't, then fine. But generally it does. And then do a quick ROI and make sure your processes are ready. And if all those bells strike in the right direction, then it's really the right fit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great advice, to be curious and ask lots of questions and make sure you understand fully what options there are and how exactly the technology or solution, I mean, in any case, not just lithium ion, can help you out and be sure to, get the full answer and solution on exactly just how you can move forward and move into a new solution. So, Michael, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking to us all about GreenCube's technology and the current state of lithium ion. It's great to see the growth and congratulations to you and the team on the 10-year anniversary for SafeFlex there. Definitely a great milestone with a new technology like that, to be able to cross that off and see the longevity of some of the product too within that 10 years and hear about that was really a great thing too. So definitely appreciate the insights around lithium ion. If people want to learn more about GreenCube's technology or get in touch with your team, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, just start with the website, greencubes.com, and reach out that you'd like to talk to someone and we'll get back to you. And that's the best way. We've got more engineers and more technical people. We talk about Robin in marketing. I mean, she's so smart. I wish she was sitting next to me when we were in science class, but I mean, we've got some really great people that love this stuff. So whether it's you're in discovery mode or you're really serious, we've got people that love to talk about lithium and the applications, and we're glad to do it with you. And I want to thank you, Kevin, and thank all our employees and our customers. I mean, it's amazing what we've been able to do the last several years, and we're excited about the future. And it's a really great space and a great technology. So appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for coming on the show today, Michael. And we'll definitely put all that information about GreenCube's technology at thenewwarehouse.com as well.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.